They said it couldn't be done. They said the dragon was slowing down and that all those international sanctions would just bring their technological rise to a screeching halt. But well, the data from mid-2026 tells a completely different, honestly almost unbelievable story. While so much of the world was looking the other way, this massive shockwave was quietly building. A resurgence so powerful it hasn't just sidestepped restrictions, it is quite literally rewriting the laws of physics and economics. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're looking at a tectonic shift in global power, stepping into an era where a completely new standard is being set. So take a second and just absorb this number. 381. As of mid-2026, China is home to 381 unicorns. Those incredibly rare billion-dollar private startups. In just the first half of the year alone, they minted 67 new ones. That is literally one new billion-dollar company being born every 5 days. But here's the real kicker. They aren't building addictive social media apps or fun photo filters to keep you scrolling. No, they've executed a total ruthless pivot to hard tech. They're building the actual physical infrastructure of our future across 4 massive hubs in Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Hangzhou. We're talking about the computational backbone that's going to dictate exactly how the next century operates. Just look at this headline for a moment from South China Morning Post. This is the news behind today's video. China records most new unicorn startups in 5 years as AI and robotics boom. The pace is the fastest since 2021, though momentum for some startups remains uncertain according to a new report. With that said, let's go straight to the intro. The algorithm buries channels that show the truth like mine every single day. The only thing that fights back is you. 1 like, 1 subscribe, turn on the bell icon. That's how the truth about China survives on YouTube. Don't let it disappear. Thank you very much. Which brings us to our mission for today. We're going to decode the core pillars of this hard tech resurgence and dig into the hard data behind this geopolitical mystery by looking at the mind, the body, and finally, a total revolution in the brain. Okay, let's dive right in with pillar number 1, the mind, and specifically DeepSeek's massive AI price war. This whole thing starts with a company in Hangzhou that has genuinely terrified Silicon Valley, DeepSeek. In mid-2026, they closed this record-breaking $7.4 billion funding round, which rocketed their valuation past $50 billion. But honestly, it's not the money causing the panic, it's what they're actually doing with it. If you look at the 2026 tech market notes, we're seeing an unprecedented cost cliff. The output token cost of DeepSeek's V4 model, when you compare it to OpenAI's GPT-40, is a staggering 8.6 times cheaper. We're watching state-of-the-art AI intelligence get completely commoditized right before our eyes. For you and me, this means integrating top-tier AI into our smartphones or business software isn't some premium luxury anymore. It's incredibly cheap, and it's triggering a brutal global price war. Now, your immediate assumption, and the assumption a lot of folks in the West made, might be that they just hoarded a bunch of restricted Western chips to pull this off, right? Well, the data proves otherwise. DeepSeek trained their V4 Pro model entirely on domestic Huawei Ascend processors. So what does this actually mean? It means China has officially decoupled its AI future from Western hardware. They're winning this price war by an absolute landslide, and they're doing it completely independent of international supply chain bottlenecks. Moving right along, that brings us to our second pillar. Pillar 2, the body, and the rise of the humanoid robot army. Because, an AI mind eventually needs a physical body to interact with the world. By 2025, Chinese companies were already shipping 90% of the globe's humanoid robots. But by 2026, they've entirely lapped the competition. And the 2026 supply chain data shows us exactly why.
If you want to build a robotic arm in the West, it's going to take you roughly 12 weeks and cost about $25,000. But in Shenzhen, you can get that exact same prototype in just 10 to 14 days for under $8,000. It's what people are calling the speed of light supply chain, and it proves this isn't just some small temporary lead. No, this is a structural, overwhelming manufacturing advantage that's pulling the entire gravitational center of robotics straight to Shenzhen. Which leads us to this incredibly important number, $5,900. That was the launch price of the Unitree R1 humanoid robot. This is the ultimate price break moment. Under $6,000, which is, by the way, less than the price of a used economy car, humanoids are no longer these fancy multi-million-dollar lab experiments. They're affordable, mass-produced tools totally ready for everyday factory deployment. And they aren't some distant sci-fi dream coming in the future. They are already hard at work. Under their National Humanoid Robot Action Plan, the government set a target of 100,000 deployed robots by 2027. We're actually seeing hundreds of these humanoids actively working right now on the assembly lines of BYD, the world's biggest EV maker. The legendary factory of the world is transforming into the factory of the humanoid at a pace that is frankly astonishing. So we have the mind and the body. Now we reach the third and probably most mind-bending pillar, the brain, and how they are completely bypassing Moore's law. This is the story of how China's semiconductor industry hit a physical brick wall due to international restrictions and simply decided to, well, change the metric of physics itself. For decades, the entire tech world has worshipped at the altar of Moore's law. This idea that to get more computing power, we physically have to shrink transistors to fit more into the exact same space using highly restricted EUV lithography machines. But Huawei introduced a total paradigm shift called Tau scaling law. Instead of obsessing over space, Tau scaling focuses on time. It reduces signal propagation delay using older DUV equipment. So think of it like this. Geometric scaling is like trying to cram more and more cars on a narrow, crowded highway. Tau scaling, it simply increases the speed limit of the cars. And the absolute secret weapon behind this Tau scaling is something called logic folding. This is the process of vertically stacking digital, analog, and memory circuits. By stacking them up like a skyscraper, instead of laying them out flat, you reduce the distance electronic signals have to travel, from millimeters all the way down to micrometers. You get these dramatically shorter interconnects, which means lightning-fast processing and massively lower power consumption. And the best part for them? It completely bypasses the need for those restricted advanced lithography machines. Alright, let's look at the actual Tau scaling revolution in practice, because this isn't just theoretical math drawn on the whiteboard. This revolution is already happening. By May 2026, Huawei had already designed and mass-produced 381 different chips based on this entirely new physical framework, and they're deploying them across smartphones, cars, and massive AI data centers. To really grasp the scale of this breakthrough, let's look at the Kirin 2026 chip debuting in the Mate 90 series. Looking at the 2026 Huawei specs, we're talking about a 53.5% increase in transistor density and a 41% reduction in power consumption, all while hitting a 3.1 GHz max clock frequency. For everyday users, that translates to devices running twice as fast while the battery lasts twice as long. Traditionally, a leap like that took 3 solid years of geometric shrinking and billions in new machinery. Huawei just did it purely through 3D architecture. And the crazy part, this is literally just the beginning. When you map out Huawei's decade-long roadmap, you see exactly where this age of Tau is headed. After the Kirin 2026 debut, they're projecting they'll hit transistor densities equivalent to a 1.4 nanometer process by 2031. By 2035, they expect a 100-fold increase in hardware integration. This is ultimately going to culminate in these massive superpod computing clusters that function as one single megaprocessor, communicating with a mind-boggling 100 nanoseconds of latency. So what does this all mean? Let's talk about defining the global future. Bringing this whole geopolitical assessment together, we really have to look at the macro view. It is glaringly obvious that this resurgence relies on a deeply coordinated national master plan. Their 15th five-year plan put embodied intelligence right at the heart of their agenda, and it created this seamless bridge connecting academic research directly to industrial application. Which brings me to a really vital quote from the source material. Ideas that work in a lab are being tested in a factory months later, not years. There are literally dedicated robotic zones in every major city streamlining this exact process. It's this fast innovation cycle that makes their push for technological self-sufficiency so formidable. The gap between theory and mass production, it's practically been erased. As we sit back and watch the future being built, from the nanosecond to the nanometer, we have to realize something crucial. When the fundamental metrics of semiconductor physics and manufacturing scale are rewritten, the global balance shifts in ways we're only just beginning to comprehend. The sheer scale of this 2026 innovation cycle is truly unlike anything we've ever seen in modern history. And that brings us to the end of our explainer. If you found this deep dive into the data as fascinating as we did, please be sure to tackle the next steps on your screen. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like on this explainer, and definitely leave a comment below with your thoughts on our upcoming investigation into the low-altitude economy. We absolutely love reading your insights, because as we step into a future completely redefined by speed and hardware decoupling, we're left with one final chilling question. Is the rest of the world truly ready for the age of Tau? Until next time, keep questioning the data, and goodbye.